Bob Herbert's OpEd.tv is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation with the support of Ann Ulnick. Hi, I'm Bob Herbert. Welcome to OpEd.tv. There are substantially more Democratic voters than Republican voters in the United States. And on nearly every important issue facing the country, from health care to gun control to climate change and so on, a solid majority of voters favor the Democratic Party position. And yet Republicans control the White House, both houses of Congress, and most state legislatures and governorships. How can that be? What's wrong with this grossly contorted political picture? We'll ask my guest, David Daley, who is the former editor-in-chief of Salon.com and the author of an important book whose title we can't say on TV. Let's call it Rat Bleep. David, welcome.
Pleasure to be here, Bob.
And let's
Thanks
start
for having me.
Right at the beginning. What does the title of your book refer to, and why did you select a title that we can't say in polite company?
Well, it's really funny. This is a book about gerrymandering, Bob. And before 2016, when this book came out, a lot of people, I think, thought that gerrymandering was the thing that put them to sleep in 8th grade civics class. It was boring, it was technical, it was math, it was maps. It is really the dark art of drawing district lines in order to favor one political party over the other. It's been with us for a long, long time. But if we're going to talk about it, we have to talk about it in a new way, because what the Republican Party did in 2010 and 2011 was they took this ancient, old, dark, toxic art and they reinvented it as something completely different. We have to call it by its name, even if that's a name that we can't necessarily say on TV.
And the colloquial name for it is rat blank or rat bleep.
Ideally, it is a dirty deed done dirt cheap.
They did a bad thing.
As AC/DC might have said. And it comes out of the Nixon White House, a lot of the kind of things that led to Watergate, a lot of the kind of early, really inexpensive political dirty tricks that were still very, very effective. What the Republicans pulled off in 2010 and 2011 was not just the ultimate political dirty trick, but something that really reinvented and remade our entire democracy.
Now, gerrymandering has been around for the longest time, and both parties have engaged in it. So what's different about what the Republicans have done recently?
You're completely right. I mean, going back to Patrick Henry in 1788 trying to keep James Madison out of the first Congress. It's named after Elbridge Gerry, who was a governor of Massachusetts in 1812, and his political party tried to rework all of the state Senate districts around Boston. A political cartoonist thought it looked a lot like a salamander. Hence, the gerrymander goes down in political infamy. In the 1980s, there was a congressman from California, Phil Burton, who drew such amazing lines for the Democrats that he called them his contribution to modern art. In the 1990s, Democrats did a wonderful job of gerrymandering Texas to keep it blue for a long time, until Tom DeLay comes in with a mid-decade redraw in the 2000s and pushes it back into the red column. But what the Republicans pull off in 2010 really is their answer to the 2008 presidential.
That's the election in which Barack Obama won.
Not only Barack Obama, but a Democratic supermajority in the U.S. Senate, 60 seats, and a renewed Democratic majority in the U.S. House. And if you look back at the TV coverage of that night, the smartest political minds in both parties are talking about how the Republican Party was going to be in the minority in this country for a generation. They were on the wrong side of demographic trends. The Democrats had a coalition of the ascendant coming.
It's so funny because I've heard this so often. The Republican Party was dead in '64 when Goldwater got defeated by Lyndon Johnson. They were dead after Watergate. They were dead after 2008. That party is never dead.
They don't die. They get to work strategizing.
Exactly.
And that's what they did right after the 2008 election. What a handful of really smart Republican strategists realized was that 2008 was a historic and important election that they were on the wrong side of, but that 2010 offered a real opportunity.
And that opportunity was that when the census comes out every 10 years, the party in power in the individual state houses get to shape the legislative
That's precisely
and congressional
right.
districts. Yeah.
Every 10 years after the census, we redraw every state legislative and congressional line in the country. It's state legislatures that control this process in 4/5 of our 50 states. So Republicans hit on a really audacious idea. What if we controlled every single aspect of redistricting in the most crucial 15 states where this would have the greatest impact? They went out and they identified that if they could take over 107 state legislative seats in 15 states and tip those chambers their way, Republicans would be able to control the drawing of more than 190 of the 435 U.S. House seats completely on their own with no Democrats in the room. This plan is called Red Map. It's a redistricting majority project, and it is aptly named because it completely tilts the House red. Republicans win a big election in 2010, but it's amplified by the fact that in 2011, all of these state house maps in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, North Carolina, Wisconsin, they are all redrawn. They are redrawn to favor the Republican Party. In 2012, the first election run on these maps, Democrats get more votes. Republicans take more seats. It's stayed that way this entire decade.
So explain that point, and I think that's the most important point. How is it that, let's say, in a given state, the Democrats can get more votes than the Republicans get in total, but the Republicans can get significantly, substantially more seats?
Gerrymandering is the art of cracking and packing. So essentially what you want to do is take the other side's votes and you want to spread them out in such a way as to make them as ineffective as possible so that they can elect as few representatives considering their numbers.
So it's a given that there'll be some Democratic seats and they just accept that.
So essentially,
but in the other seats
is you either crack those votes and try to spread them as thinly as you can across as many districts as possible, or you try to pack them into as few districts as possible, where Democrats win with upwards of 80-90% of the vote.
So even if you get a lot of votes, you only get one seat.
You only get one seat.
Yeah.
Republicans then take all of the surrounding seats. You see them pull this off in state after state. So in 2012, which is the first election run on these maps, Democrats get 1.4 million more votes for the U.S. House than Republican candidates.
Right.
Republicans not only keep a 234-201 majority in the House, but they control all of the chambers in these purple states like Ohio, which goes for Obama, but sends 12 Republicans and 4 Democrats to Congress. Pennsylvania goes for Obama.
A traditionally Democratic state.
13 U.S. congressmen are Republican, 5 are Democrats. North Carolina, 10 Republicans and 3 Democrats. So all of these blue and purple states send bright crimson red delegations to Washington, and they also have bright red legislatures in their state house and state senate.
So the Democrats end up getting more votes, but less representation.
Exactly.
That seems like democracy turned on its head.
It is the ultimate dirty trick.
So, but this is not just legal, but it's traditional in our country. It's just that the Republicans have raised it to an art form and beyond, I suppose.
What happens in 2011 is that partisan intent combines with amazing, sophisticated new computer technology, mapping software, and the big data revolution. So Republicans have this idea at the perfect time. Essentially, all of the districting that has been done from 1790 through 2000 is in minor leagues. And in 2010, it jumps straight into the steroids era. And it's because of the technology. It's really the data and the software and the ease and the certainty with which it can be manipulated that makes the post-2010 cycle so fundamentally different from any other in our history.
So even though it's legal, There have been lawsuits,
Yes.
and we have a case out of Wisconsin, and
Yes.
it has made its way all the way to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court is looking at this to determine what?
Well, the Supreme Court has never, ever established a standard on partisan gerrymandering in this country in order to say when it is unconstitutional. These maps in Wisconsin, the first election run on them is 2012. Democrats get 174,000 more votes. Republicans take 60 of 99 seats. So that's 60 to 39, even though Democrats get almost a couple 100,000 more votes. So you've had citizens in Wisconsin. People often say, what can I do about gerrymandering? Well, a handful of retirees got together in a Milwaukee tea room, and they started plotting a legal strategy, and it's at the Supreme Court right now. And essentially, they're asking the Supreme Court to say that this kind of extreme partisan gerrymandering, that this gerrymandering on steroids that is happening right now, goes too far, that it is time for the court to step in and draw a line.
Now, there have been oral arguments. Have you been able to get any kind of sense from the arguments which way the court might be leaning?
Like so many things in this country right now, it's all up to Justice Kennedy. This is a deeply...
He's the ultimate essential justice.
He is. It is a 4-4 court on this. I sat in the courtroom for oral arguments, and what I was trying to figure out was whether any of the conservative justices had been moved over the course of the last few years by how different this last round of gerrymandering was compared to any others.
Now, the conservative justices, not surprisingly, think that the current system is just fine.
They think it's perfectly wonderful. And essentially all of this goes back to a case from Pennsylvania in the last decade, which is the last time partisan gerrymandering appeared before the court. That's the Veith case. And it was a 5-4 decision, and you had 4 conservatives, led by then Justice Scalia, who wanted to make partisan gerrymandering non-justiciable. They were ready to say, we've never made a standard on this before, let's close the door on it. You had 4 liberals saying this is a serious problem, we need to do something. And you had Justice Kennedy in the middle saying, I agree that this is a problem, but I don't see a clear and manageable standard here that could guide this court or other courts in future cases.
So he saw a problem, but he did not see a solution.
Exactly. So essentially, for the last decade, gerrymandering nerds and stats geeks and all kinds of democracy reformers have been trying to come up with the clear and manageable standard that might tempt Justice Kennedy. And there's something called the efficiency gap that really what it does is it quantifies the number of cracked and packed voters and tries to give you a mathematical test as far as when a gerrymander has gone too far, when it is unnatural, when these districts would not exist in the outside world if politicians did not craft them to be so. So essentially, all of this comes down to whether or not Justice Kennedy buys into a standard now that he did not buy into a decade ago.
And he does, he's made it clear that he's got concerns, but we don't know which way
we don't know
he'll go.
Whether or not he's going to see this as clear and manageable. And I mean, nothing is at stake, Bob, except the very future of our democracy.
And this is all being played out in right before our eyes. So we have a very important off-year election coming up in 2018. All House districts are up because they're up every 2 years. But then you have these state houses that are up, and whoever controls the individual state houses in 2018 will control the redistricting in 2020. So before we get to the redistricting, how difficult would it be for the Democrats under the current conditions to take back the House next year?
Nothing is impossible, and one should be really careful making any kind of political
Trust me, I've
predictions
found
these
that
days. But it is extraordinarily, these district lines make it really, really difficult for the Democrats to take back the House next year.
Right.
There simply aren't enough competitive districts left out there for them to target. Democrats need to win back 24 seats. That is a tall order under these maps. They've been focused on the 23 districts that Hillary Clinton won but elected a Republican to Congress. The trouble is, only 4 of those races were actually as close as 10%. And there were 13 districts that Trump won and elected a Democrat to Congress. Right. And 3 of those were so close as to be within 5%. So Republicans have as many targets as Democrats do. This map is stuck. Our swing seats simply don't have any swing anymore. Democrats have not picked up a single seat all decade in 12, 14, or 16 in North Carolina, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin. And if they can't figure out a way to do that, and these maps make it almost impossible, it's so hard to see how the map gets them to 24.
And it really would make such a difference if the Democrats, and we're talking about the House because presumably it's easier for the Democrats to flip the House than it is to flip the Senate in 2018. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I absolutely do.
Yeah.
The U.S. Senate map is brutal. But there are actually more important races on the ballot for Democrats in 2018, and I would say that there are 5 governor's races that if the party is not focused on them intently, they are focused on the very wrong place.
I wanted to get to that because what we want to make clear here is why voters, or what voters should understand about the importance of the elections in 2018.
And in 2017.
And it's not just the national elections.
No.
It's not just the House and the Senate. So
Democrats can take back the U.S. House in 2018, and it will not do anything to change the underlying structural disadvantage that the party faces heading into redistricting in 2020 and 2021. And that's because it's the state legislatures that are going to draw these lines after the 2020 census, and these state legislatures have been gerrymandered perhaps worse than the U.S. Congress. So
they're making it harder and harder
exactly.
for the Democrats to get control of the state houses, the state legislatures,
what Democrats
and the
have
governorship.
to unwind is a 74-45 disadvantage in North Carolina, a 66-33 disadvantage in the Ohio State House, a 121-81 disadvantage in Pennsylvania State House. Democrats have gotten more votes for the State House in Michigan every single cycle of this decade. But on these maps, they've never gotten more seats. So Democrats face a steep challenge in taking back the state legislative chambers that will control this process next time. There is a way back for them, however, if they can win the governorships of these key states. Virginia in 2017, and then in 2018, these key states I keep coming back to, and we kept coming back to them on election night 2016 as well. Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Michigan. If the Democrats are able to win a single statewide election in those states next year, then they can have veto power over bad maps and perhaps a road back to fairness, and then they can use the next decade to do the hard work of organizing district by district to try to take these legislative chambers back. There is no easy fix here.
So we've accused the Russians of attacking the democratic process in this country, and in fact they did. There's no question about that. But what we're talking about here now is a sustained assault on our democracy by America's own Republican Party.
What we have done to our own democracy is so much worse than what we are accusing the Russians of having done. If our democracy was a horror show, and increasingly it feels like one, the call is coming from inside the House. We have done this to ourselves. Specifically in 2010 and 2011, the Republican Party did this to us, and there has been since then a sustained assault on voting rights. It's the very first thing that all of these gerrymandered legislatures in all of these states have done, is to go after voting rights. It's the first thing, or one of the very first things Donald Trump did as president was put Vice President Pence and Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach in charge of a panel on electoral integrity, looking for all of the stolen votes that we know did not come. We do not have a voter fraud problem in this country. We have a voter suppression problem in this country. And what the Republicans have done, first by gerrymandering and then by enacting all of these onerous restrictions on the vote, is to make that worse.
And it shows how all of this is entwined. So
Yes.
the Supreme Court a few years ago, I guess 2013, essentially gutted the Voting Rights Act, but you get control of the Supreme Court over a long period of time via the redistricting. Essentially, you have to win these local races, and you have to get control of the White House at a time when you've got Senate control, and you can get these appointees to the courts, on the courts and stuff. And the Republicans just do this year after year, decade after decade. It's under the radar. It doesn't get a lot of attention. Why is it that they seem more committed to the sort of the nuts and bolts of winning these elections and accumulating power than the Democrats?
They understand the long game, right? Democrats have never been particularly good at that. Republicans have been organizing at the school board level for decades now, and Democrats simply don't get excited by those races. Democratic donors don't like to give to anything that is not as sexy as a White House race.
Right.
And Democratic voters struggle to even turn out in the midterm elections. What the Republicans were able to do in 2009 and 2010 through Red Map is they convinced their donors that Republican money was better spent in local races, that it could have more influence and impact there. So Republicans pulled off this entire Red Map plan for $30 million, which really is chump change in modern American politics.
Right, nowadays.
You can't lose a small state Senate race for less than $100 million these days. But for $30 million, Republicans were able to bake in control of the U.S. House, perhaps for an entire decade, maybe more, but also all of these state legislative chambers in all of these states where they have pushed very conservative legislation through North Carolina, Michigan, Ohio, Texas. All of these states have become laboratories for far-right social agendas for all of these attacks on women, on labor, on voting rights, and it was a bargain. And it all started because they were able to convince their donors that the money was better spent at the local level than throwing it into a presidential race.
What should we be doing? How should these legislative and congressional districts be drawn so that it doesn't give a gruesome imbalance to one party or another?
It's a great question. I mean, really, gerrymandering is like cancer in an awful lot of ways. Mm-hmm. There are lots of different kinds of gerrymanders, and there are lots of different cures. What the Supreme Court is doing, as long as Justice Kennedy is convinced, could become a cure for the most toxic form of partisan gerrymandering. It could also go a long way towards helping end racial gerrymandering. I mean, ultimately, in the end, if we're going to fix our redistricting problem, we have to fix our districting problem.
Right.
We have to think about a different way of electing members of Congress that is actually fair. There's a bill before Congress right now called the Fair Representation Act that Don Beyer of Virginia put in that would combine ranked choice voting and multi-member districts in such a way that all of these states right now, like Massachusetts, that has 9 Democrats, or Oklahoma that has 5 Republicans, if you elected members in a different way, you would end up not only with Democrats and Republicans representing states where right now you can't find anyone in Congress, but we all know that these voters still exist in these states.
Right.
But it would change the way Congress works, because you might actually have bridge builders again. You might actually have people who don't think compromise is a dirty word. You might actually have districts that are competitive, where politicians have to talk to everybody once again and might actually work together once they're in office.
We've run out of time. We could talk for quite a while longer. David Daley, thank you so much. We'll be back in a moment with a final word. As I've traveled the country over the past several months, I've listened to countless Americans complain angrily and sometimes even despairingly about what has happened to the United States, about the quality of jobs and the continuing economic plight of working families, about the cost of a college education, about race relations, and above all, about the presidency of Donald Trump and the chaotic politics in Washington. What I haven't heard is confidence that the Democratic Party and its leadership can win back power and set things right. And that's because the Democratic Party appears to have lost its way. What does it stand for? No one really knows. Who are its leaders? What are the social and economic principles that go to the very core of what it means to be a Democrat? To have any real chance in next year's important off-year elections and in the presidential race in 2020, the Democrats will have to lose their perpetual timidity and rediscover their raison d'etre. That means developing a clearly articulated program for raising the living standards of poor and middle-class Americans. It means refusing to weaken its commitment to racial and ethnic equality. It means fighting not just for a woman's right to choose, that should be a given, but for the right of women everywhere to be treated with dignity and respect. It means developing leadership capable of turning Americans away from the political nonsense that dominates so much of the news and so much of our lives, and replacing it with a set of core values we can truly believe in. There is plenty to fight for, but Democrats have tended to be reluctant to fight as hard as the stakes and the opposition require. The Republicans will always fight by all means necessary. It remains to be seen whether the Democrats are capable of meeting that challenge. That's all for now. See you next time.